The title did not come immediately. I didn't really have a title. And probably the reason for that is because the threat at the center of the story, whatever this monster or thing or danger was going to be, was not at all clear to me at this point. I had sort of everything but the threat. I just had a very cloudy emotional feel for what that thing was to be. Didn't know what it was yet. But I had certain, starting points. There was my itch to do an alien in a movie that looked real. And there was the fact that I'd met H.R. Giger in Paris and looked at some of his paintings, and I'd been struck by them. So I started putting that together. I think I went through and exhausted every possible type of science fiction threat there is. I considered them picking up an alien disease. I considered a non-physical kind of spiritual alien that would possess people. I went through all the different ways you can harm the human body and all the disgusting things that can happen. And the thing that finally, I think, broke it through for me as I was reading this underground comic book by an artist whose name escapes me at the moment. And he had drawn this one-page, one-panel story in this underground comic. It just showed a guy in a spacesuit with a kind of a worm creature emerging from his chest. And I thought, yeah, that's it. What could be scarier than having the thing infest your own body like that? And then things started to fall into place for me. I started to use as a model parasites, real living parasites here on Earth. They're microscopic things, but they have these complicated life cycles in which they infest. Well, first a cow picks it up on the hoof and it burrows into the person, and then it mutates in the body and it gets in the meat, and then a person eats the steak and it turns into something else, and then it crawls out your life. I took these submicroscopic parasites and I made them larger. The parasite that infests the person. And so the alien, the whole notion of it and everything that it did was put together through many days and nights over many months of just painstakingly considering and discarding every possible idea until I had a life cycle for this thing that I liked.
Now, few people realize this, but that project is actually at the origin of the giant leap forward in science fiction design. Because back then, what Jodorowsky did is he actually brought Moebius out of drawing westerns and told him to draw science fiction, which Moebius had never done. And he brought Dan O'Bannon, who was basically a writer, and just said, I want you to be my special effects supervisor. And he went and got Giger and said, I want you to design some of the stuff for Dune. And he was friends with Dali at the time and said, I want you to come in and just be credible for all of us, And he went and got Pink Floyd. And I remember Moebius saying, I had one Pink on one side and one Floyd on the other, and he was there drawing while the guys were hovering. And this was going to be the Dune project. Now, the whole thing capsized and just disappeared into thin air. Dan O'Bannon went back to America, wrote Star Beast, and Star Beast became Alien. This is after he'd done Dark Star. So by the time by the time Dan O'Bannon was actually with Ridley, suddenly, mysteriously, that same crew came back again, which was Giger and Moebius. If you actually get to see the book, which I have, I have a copy of it, with all the designs from that time period, you go, oh my God, you've got a whole history of the evolution, the revolution in science fiction design in the early 70s. I mean, there's like such an incredible loop, where suddenly you understand why that paradigm shift in science fiction at that time. Because up to that point, basically science fiction, had gone as far as 2001 in the best of cases. And maybe Silent Running, which is kind of an adult picture. It was a great picture, but design-wise, there wasn't much to it. Nobody had that extra edge of vision yet. So in many ways, some of us think Jodorowsky is actually the grandfather of a whole school of thinking in science fiction.
I tell you what basically he did. I had been talking around all of these ideas to Ronnie. I said, I want to do this story now about astronauts who are forced to land on a dead planet in some remote part of the universe. There they discover an ancient alien artifact, okay, inside of which, of course, there's some kind of a monster or a threat. And I was having a little bit of trouble making up the monster, and I didn't quite know where to go with the second half of the piece. And Ronnie reminded me that sometime before I had told him about another script idea I had called Gremlins. This was pre-Joe Dante Gremlins. And that idea was simply about the World War II flying fortresses, who reported that little creatures would get in their ship called gremlins and mess up their instrumentation. And I had the notion that make it a B-29, make it the raids on Tokyo, taking off from some island base, flying in, incendiary bombardment of Tokyo, and then on the way back through the clouds they get separated from the rest of the formation, and bumpity bump, something lands on the plane. Cute. And of course they're gremlins, but really, really mean ones, who break into the ship by means of the gun turret at the rear of the ship, which is glass, and they start working their way forward, killing everybody they meet, doing horrible things to them. And so that the bulk of the picture is these men who have 1,000 miles of Pacific to fly over before they can reach their own base. And in the meantime, they have to fight off these little creatures who want to kill them and who are progressively working their way forward through the ship. And it was an idea that I had and shelved. One has a million ideas, talks about them. Some of them you work on, some of them you just leave in your mind. Occasionally one of them later gets resurrected. And this was one of the ones that was sitting back there. Ronnie said, why don't you, he said, the first half of your idea about the spaceship and the men landing and picking up some type of monstrosity is, it's a really good one. What if you took the second half of that story, Gremlins, and stuck it onto that? Which is to say that the second half of the movie is the astronauts are on their way home with a thing in the ship, and they're having to battle the thing and try to save their lives, so that they can get home. And I said that's terrific. That would work really good.
The thing that Jules did for me was completely open up the door in Hollywood. They didn't know what to do with it, but I got a lot of material immediately. And one of them was a science fiction called Alien. And I was, wrestling with the idea of Tristan and Isolde, which was a little worrying because it was another period piece. And in fact, it was even more esoteric because there was absolutely nothing esoteric about the Duelists. The Duelist to me was a Western, really, with two hussars. But, so I was really going back into the lion's mouth. And I was getting very insecure about that, even though the script was actually interesting and well written. And I read the Alien, decided I couldn't possibly take another chance on doing another period piece at this point in time. And I called them up and I was in Hollywood in 24 hours. But I'd seen, when I'd been showing the Duelists, that was the year that Star Wars was made. So I went along to Hollywood Boulevard, and I'd never really experienced audience participation like that. It was the first or third week of the opening of Star Wars, the first really Star Wars for me, which is by far the best one. And that kind of knocked me off my feet. I thought, God, this guy's doing this, and I'm, going back and doing something else, which is incredibly esoteric and nobody will ever, you know, I'll have, me and my mum will see it. I should be really thinking of something else. About 2 weeks later, I was offered a script for Alien. And so that's how it happened. I'd already seen, you know, 5 years before that, probably 2001, which had already stuck in my mind is, okay, this seems to be the threshold of the kind of science fiction that I would like to do, because it's the first time I've met reality, right? In that genre. I think I was the right director to do science fiction because I didn't know much about it, and therefore I didn't believe in it. But I was intrigued enough by the dynamics of the story, of the script, the outrageous dynamics of the script, to say, I think I can do something with this.
The first time I nearly worked with him was on The Duelists, which was his first picture. And he sent the script to my then agent, who I'd just left. And I was doing a picture with Roger Vadim down in the Loire Valley. And he told me this a couple of years later when I saw him about Alien. And he said, I was staying in the same hotel as you. And I said, well, why didn't you say hello? He said, because you hadn't replied to the fact that I'd sent you a script. And I thought, sod him, you know, why should I talk to him? So he didn't talk to me. Of course, the agent hadn't actually sent the script to me. So I lost out on Alien. Then we did, on The Duelist, sorry, and then we did Alien. And I did, I think, about 3 days on that, plus all the building of the chest and the neck and the head and all that stuff, you know. And after 3 days, I had an extremely bad bronchial attack, the first time in my life. Never happened since, either. And ended up in intensive care and had to take 2 weeks off after that. So, you know, I lost I couldn't work it. So sadly, I missed that one. And John did it. John Hurt did the, you know, and the whole thing. I wanted to, you know, and especially when the little bastard who came out of the stomach, you know, I thought I knew all about this. Been working at it for ages, you know. And he was sold. The little Alien was sold for something like, I don't know, about $40,000, $50,000 or something, recently, you know. Anyway, that was the first time, and the second.
We had a casting girl working for us named Mary Goldberg, and she told us that there were 2 women that we should see in New York that she thought would be perfect. And one who had done some films, but had not broken through as yet, and the other woman who had, a young girl who had not made a movie as yet. And the first woman was Meryl Streep. And Meryl's longtime companion had just died. And I did not feel that she should be asked to come in from the country, and it just happened a day before or whatever, and that we could see her another time, maybe when we came back to New York. The other woman was, of course, Sigourney Weaver.
One of the reasons I ended up deciding to do the picture, because I wasn't that keen to begin with. You know, I was sort of a snob coming from drama school. You know, I wanted to be like work with Mike Nichols or something. You know, I didn't want to be in a science fiction picture. But I thought, God, you know, this is a really interesting woman. I've never seen a woman in a picture like this. And in the end, that really, I felt like it could be really interesting. As it turned out, it was a good decision. But it was sort of breaking new ground. I mean, not really, but in terms of action movies, it was.
Well, the heroes of slasher films have often been women, but usually what they did was run around in their undies and just manage to survive till the end. Ripley kind of changes that, I think, more than any other heroine by going from being somewhat helpless to being a really active leader and, you know, a real force working against the aliens.
Well, let's talk about killing it. We know it's using the air shafts. Will you listen to me, Parker?
Shut up!
I think it, you know, this is a tough one, and I'm going to start babbling because I get this a lot. It's, I don't think it's that different having a woman in the forefront, but it does allow you to play with certain stereotypes and certain images in a way that you wouldn't with a man. For example, Cameron played with the whole idea of the mother. She was mother to Newt. We met the mother alien, and it had a kind of maternal instinct, which the first aliens had none of. So that was sort of, you know, an interesting place to go. It also evokes sympathy because no matter what, the men around her are never going to take her as seriously as they should, and they really should, because she usually outlives all of them.
One day, there was a fairly complicated setup, which, as I say, Ridley directed primarily, you know, looking through the camera, because he was a very visual director, as indeed Antonioni was. So everything to him was what was in the frame, and, you know, objects and things and people were composed within that frame. So it was a fairly long setup where they had to lay some track, and they had lights which sort of flashed on and off, and I think there was steam in it, and doors that opened and shut, and more lights, and so the whole setup for that took about 2.5 hours. And really, you know, got it all together, and, you know, had various things done and changed and so on. And finally, after about 2.5 hours, he said to his first assistant, Paul Robertson, he said, "Okay, I'm ready. Let's shoot it." And Paul said, "But Ridley," he said, "we've got 6 actors in this." And Ridley said, "Oh shit." That's the story.
The first couple of weeks, Ridley would always say to me, you know, try not to look in the camera. And I finally said, gosh, you know, you put it right in front of me, so how can I not look at it? And then Tom Scarrett was sweet. He said, when you have to crawl, I guess we were doing some cross the frame stuff, and it was hard not to look, you know, kind of glance. And he said, you know, just look right below or right above or something like that. And he had to say things to me like, you know, eyes are very important in film, so you should use your eyes more. You can do a lot with just your eyes. I mean, the whole thing was such a learning experience for me, and so much fun, really.
The thing about Ron Cobb is that if you know a little bit about his background, this is a guy that is not just an illustrator, but is also a technical illustrator and an art director and a designer, and somebody who could draw better than anyone on average in an industry like ours. The guy could do doors that clicked into place and opened as perfect isometric perspectives, and you could build a set just off of his drawing. You didn't have to do anything. You'd give that to a construction manager, and you could just see a set go up. So I think that was part of the reason probably that he was picked to work on the first movie, because the first movie was done in England, where that kind of talent is essential and identified immediately, you know. Because they don't kid around, basically. English art departments, they really know what they're hiring, and that's how they work. It is a bit of a meritocracy over there. And I think also knowing a little bit about how Ridley works, it makes sense that you design from the inside out. In other words, you find out the function of a design, and you find out its place in the script, and then you build a look that's based entirely on the functionality.
Three, double four, take one, A and B.
Action. How you coming?
Feels like we've been here for a month.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Shh, they should listen to us and never come to this planet in the first place.
Right. Should never have landed on this damn ball to start with.
You're right. The sooner we get this thing patched up and get out of here, the sooner I'm gonna feel. Get my own ship. If I ever live to see it. This place gives me the fucking creeps.
Hey, wait a minute. I think I got it. Give it a try now.
I'm sorry, my friend, you don't have anything.
Damn, I'm sure that was it.
Well, it's not, man. Try the next one. What engineering school did you go to?
What's happening down there?
Oh, shit, man. My Johnson's what's happening, man. You know that? Shh. A lot of real hard work. Hard work, Ripley.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Oh, just one time, you know what I mean? Boom! You ought to try sometime, sweetheart.
Parker, I've got the toughest job on this ship. Yeah, I gotta listen to all your numbers.
Don't let her get to you, man. You
Just one time.
what you really like to do is ball it, man.
No. Ball cow, shit. Why don't you get off my back?
I'll get off your back as soon as 12
Hey, Brett, how you coming?
I feel like we've been here a month. That's how I'm coming.
Oh, man, stop complaining. I know how you feel. We shouldn't have come to this damn place in the first place.
Never have landed on this damn ball, I know that.
Well, come on, man. The sooner we patch this damn thing up, the sooner we get out of here. Get my own ship. Hope I live to see it. This place gives me the creeps.
Wait a minute. I think I got it.
You got something? Wait, hold it. No, that's not it.
Damn.
Well, come on, man. Try the next one. Don't
I
just
thought
give
sure
up.
that was it.
Well, try the next one.
What's happening down there?
Oh, my Johnson is happening, baby. That's what's happening. My Johnson is happening. A lot of work, Ripley. Real hard work.
Yeah, I can hear it.
A and B.
Hey, Brett, how you doing?
Great. I feel like I've been here a month.
Oh, come on, man. Stop complaining and fix the thing. Yeah, all right. We shouldn't have landed here in the first place, but we're here, so fix it.
Should never have landed on this damn ball, I know that.
Look, man, you're right. But the sooner we patch this thing up, the sooner we can get out of here. Now fix the damn thing. This place gives me the creeps. Come on, get with
Hold it. I
got
think
something?
I've got it.
What? Okay, wait, hold it. Let me try it.
All right. Ready?
No, that's not it. Try the next one.
Damn, I thought
Brett,
sure
try the
that was
next
it.
one,
Oh,
man.
Fuck.
What's happening down there?
My Johnson's happening, Mama. My Johnson's happening. A lot of work, Ridley. Real hard work.
Yeah, I can hear it.
You ought to try it sometime.
Parker, I've got the toughest job on this ship. Gotta listen to all your numbers.
Would you get off my back, please?
I'll get off your back as soon as 12 modules fixed.
Good. Running. 344, take 6. Cameras A and B.
Fascinating.
Action.
How you coming, Brett?
Great. Fascinating work.
Good. Glad to see you're not complaining. We shouldn't have landed here in the first place, but we're here now.
Right. Shouldn't have landed on this damn ball, I know that.
Yeah, you're right. But now that we're here, the sooner you patch that thing up, the sooner we can get out of here. So let's get with it, huh, man? This place gives me the creeps.
Wait a minute. I think I've
Got something?
got it. I think I've got it.
Hold it. Let me try it. No, you haven't got a thing. Try the next one.
What's happening
Sure
down
that
there?
was it. Oh, God.
My Johnson is happening, Mama. That's what's happening. My Johnson is happening. A lot of work, real hard work.
I can hear it.
Could you please get off my back?
I'll get off your back as soon as 12 modules fixed.
This broad's a bitch, man.
I'm gonna get to you.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip a line? Yeah. I'm sorry.
Cut. Running. Mark it. 344 takes 7, A and B.
Action.
How you coming, man?
Great. This is a real challenge.
Good, man. I'm glad to see you're not complaining, Brett. They should have listened to us and never come to this planet in the first place.
Right. Shouldn't have landed on this damn ball. I know that.
You're right, but now the sooner you get that thing patched up, the sooner we can get out of here. This place gives me the creeps.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
You got something?
I think I've got it.
Okay, hold it. Wait, let me try.
All right, ready?
Okay. No, you got nothing. Try the next one.
Man, I was sure that was it.
But it's not, man. Go ahead, try the next one. Come on,
Give
Brett.
me a break.
Try the next
Give me
one,
a
man.
break.
What's happening down there?
My Johnson's happening, baby. That's what's happening. My Johnson's happening. A lot of work, Ripley. Real hard work.
Yeah? I can hear it.
You ought to try it sometime, baby. I want to kill her.
On this ship.
I want to kill her.
I gotta listen to all your numbers.
I'd like to get her right in the face. Why don't you get off my back?
I'll get off your back as soon as 12 modules fixed.
Should I hit the box? Can I hit the box? Smart mouth, broad, huh? Can you believe that, broad, huh?
Right.
The difficult thing is that, you know, if you're into a spaceship, even now, like, there aren't any references, you know. I mean, yes, I know at the moment they're building a space station up in the sky, but up until that point, there was no reference. You had to invent it, you know.
I figured along the way it should be dirty and used, because I think I'd been doing a lot of traveling to and from, both in commercials and, you know, I'd been doing a lot of 747 and 707 traveling. And I noticed that all the planes that always start off super clean and beautiful, gradually they're getting worn out. And then gradually they're introducing in the lavatories and the instruction sheets multilingual instructions. And, you know, I noticed the formicas getting chipped. And so I thought that, you know, when you think about these freighters in deep space that will be anchored in some giant company's armada, sitting unmanned, you know, revolving around some small planetoid, waiting for the next crew to come in and be taken up and open up all the stuff and get all the technology going and revitalizing the ship, they're going to get pretty worn out, right? Even with the maintenance crews and the cleaning services and things like that, because all that will have to happen. And so I thought it must be like that. It must be dog-eared, you know. And so that seemed to be the obvious thing to do, even though everybody was tickled pink by it. I thought, well, it's kind of obvious.
When we did Dark Star, which was in the wake of 2001, we thought we wanted partly for the novelty, partly because it was realer, mostly just for laughs. We wanted to show this once sterile spaceship in a rundown condition, like some old bachelor apartment. But we didn't really succeed very well at that, because we didn't at that time know the tolerances of film for mess. And it became apparent to me that if you wanted something high-tech to look messed up, you had to practically destroy it. And Lucas made Star Wars. A couple of years after that, he was working on it, and one of the things that he himself mentioned that he was trying to do with Star Wars was the idea of the used future. Oh yeah? I went and I saw it, and I didn't think that came across very strongly there either. So by the time I was ready to do Alien, and Ridley had signed aboard as director, unfortunately Ridley's talent is to be able to sculpt detail to a remarkable degree, unlike most other cinematographers. If something wants to look textural, he can get it where many others cannot. So that was fortunate. But I mentioned to him my own experience, which is if we want this spacecraft to look industrial beat up, you're going to have to make it about 3 times messier to the naked eye than you want to see it. And that Alien probably was the first time where an audience clearly saw a futuristic machine in a run-down condition.
I was given this task of finding someone or something, and initially we thought, you know, let's find some models. There was a model called Verushka, who was this like 6'5", very, very thin model, and we were like hauling in. I was sort of casting, you know, ringing up all these obscure casting places and say, can you come in and bring very scant clothing, and we want to actually photograph you like squatting on the ground with kind of, you know, when you squat and like the Maasai squat, when they're kind of, because their legs are so long, their knees seem to kind of come up like alongside their face like that, and look, you almost look like a grasshopper. And I had the job of sort of like taking Polaroids, because again, video cameras, unfortunately domestic video cameras didn't exist then, and they must have thought I was a very strange person. Thank God I was doing it in you know, in Shepperton, otherwise I might have been arrested. But eventually a casting agency that handled dancers, I think a guy called Michael, I think it was Michael Summerton or something, called me up and said, I've just seen a guy in a pub, and I've got his name and his number, and I think he's the guy you want. Do you want to see him? And that was when he saw Balaji Bajero, who was a student studying, I think he was from Nigeria or something, and he was studying. So poor Balaji got dragged in, and he was it. He was the alien. And I think he found it pretty uncomfortable too, because he's, you know, it was coming back to that thing in the Narcissus where he was embedded in the wall and had to crawl out. I mean, there was a lot of takes we did with that, and there was a lot of, you know, sort of CO2 stuff being, you know, blown in his face and in every orifice, so to speak, as he detaches himself and comes out. And I think he got a few knocks and bruises in that.
You know, when I was a child, I grew up in a very dark, in very dark rooms. The place where I played as a child had no windows, and so I think that gives you prägt. What can I say? This. Was heißt prägt? Prägt einem. I don't know. If you grow up in a certain space, I mean that later on you work also in these dark rooms, or you prefer that, or something like that. I don't know. Präg means it characters you, or it prints you in a way.
Huh? Well, it forms your character.
Yeah, it forms your character. Yes, that's it. I was designer for buildings, and as a profession, I'm industrial designer, and so I know how to do plans and everything. It helped me very much to design a creature, for instance. I work for a movie. You know, in Switzerland we have no film industry, so you don't know nothing here about everything. And when first they asked me to do something, I always thought that they will do a kind of drawing film, I mean, like Mickey Mouse. And so finally they convinced me that these things I'm drawing, they will build up, and then I thought they will be small models. And they said, no, big. I couldn't believe. And I was very surprised when I saw the first time to have such a small painting in such a huge three-dimensional space. That was wonderful.
I think Giger is a visionary. I think he's absolutely frightening. You know, as an artist, I'll never have that degree of creativity, inventiveness, or genius. And at the same time, I don't want it, because it's just far too scary and spooky. His world really, really, you know, it's one of the most genuine visions of hell that we've known in the recent past. You know, the guy is really horrific.
He's a very strange person. I mean, I don't believe there is anybody that is as strange as he is in his peculiar way, and therefore the right guy to design the alien. And so Giger designed the alien for the first picture, it underwent a little bit of a transformation when Cameron did Aliens. And now Fincher doing Alien 3, it underwent yet another little transformation. So it's flexible, but it's definitely with that head and the jaw that comes out and all of those sort of trademark aspects, it gives flexibility so that you can work with it, and people always recognize it.
He really did broaden the horizons of the movie Monster, and his look, the biomechanical look, is so unique. Gordon Carroll told us that when they were working on the first film, Giger had some sculptors working for him that were old-time, very experienced sculptors had worked on monsters and throughout the years. And they were saying, what is this stuff with the bones and the tubing and all this? This is never going to read. You need wrinkles and warts and scales on this monster in order to make it look really scary. And luckily nobody went for that, and Giger got his point across. But he really does have a body of work that is special. He's not a monster maker. And because he's got he's a fine artist and he's got his slant on things, it gives a different look than you would get by pulling a monster maker in off the street and saying, do the strangest psychosexual creature you can come up with. You'll come up with something, chances are, that's got wrinkles and warts on it instead of, what he came up with.
He started with life-size paintings of the alien on huge canvases, front and side, to the same degree of quality of his museum paintings. That was how he started. And at that point, he thought that his commitment was finished, and that since he had done such a thorough job of depicting it in paint from different angles, that now, that the producers would find a technician who would make that 3D. And he went back to Switzerland, and they tried, but the people that the producers were able to find were not able to sculpt what Giger had drawn. And he came back after a few weeks and took over. And he had enough pride in his work to not be willing to let what they were doing appear in that fashion. Somewhat in contradiction to his personality, he's a very nice person. He's easy to talk to, and he's easy to work with. And he's a genius at what he does, and it kind of goes hand in hand. My experience over the years of working with artists of different levels of talent, usually the most cooperative ones, it's not 100% rule, it's about 90%, but the ones that are the most cooperative are usually the geniuses. They're usually the most open to suggestion and the last to get their back up about criticism of their work. Whereas you move down the scale to people who don't have much talent at all, these are people that are impossible to work with by and large. They don't want to hear your input. They refuse to do it anyway other than their own. They're usually bad-tempered, unreliable. And Giger was a very hard worker, always open to suggestion. You see, the thing is, a guy like Giger, he knows that someone comes along and says, why don't you put 6 fingers on the thing's hand rather than 5? The reason he doesn't get his back up is he knows he can do that well also. And the really talented person knows they can do a variety of things well, whereas the person with very little talent knows damn well there's only one thing that he can do, which will pass. And if anybody tries to make him do anything at all that deviates slightly, it's going to be horrible. So if you really want to find your prima donnas, you pick them from among the no-talent bums. Those are the guys that are really impossible to work with. The ones, I won't do this, and I have to have a long lunch hour. The ones who are good, they show up in time, they work hard, and they accept rejections without resentments. And that was what Giger turned out to be like, finally, when he did ship aboard on Alien.
There are a lot of reasons why the Alien films in general and the first film in particular were able to create such a feeling of dread. I think, you know, one of the things that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about is very simply the design of the alien. It's all mouth. There are no eyes. There's no sense of any kind of consciousness there that you could deal with. It is so different from us. You know, even when you look at the face of a crocodile or a shark, you see eyes. You see a sentience there that you think is in some way a little bit like me. At least it's from this planet. When you look at the alien, it is completely another thing. It is the unknown, but it has teeth, and it has even more teeth behind those teeth. So there's something so primevally terrifying about it that it's really a predator rendered down to its simplest. It's the last glimpse that you have in life if you get eaten by a predator is the teeth. See, you see what I mean? So it works at such a primal level that we probably don't even understand it. I think there are basic phobias that are played upon, but all horror movies all work to the degree that they are successful on playing on basic, direct human phobias. I think one of the brilliance of Alien, of the first film, and therefore of its successors because they carry on the design motifs, is that the design was intended not just to play upon the obvious primal fears, fear of little scuttling things, fear of insects, fear of suffocation, but there's also a whole other layer to it, which is a kind of psychosexual fear. There's a kind of a Freudian fear underneath the whole thing. You know, the fear of something growing inside you, which is the fear of pregnancy, and therefore the fear of sex. There's a whole thing that it taps into that no science fiction film, I think, ever tapped into previously, and it's inherent in the design. It was a contribution made, I think, in conjunction between Ridley Scott and Hans Ruedi Giger, the designer of the Alien and the Facehugger, and all of his imagery has this kind of primal sexual component to it. You know, which I think is what made it all very fascinating to people. Whether they sort of acknowledged it on the surface or not, it was always there. It's always been there.
We started to shoot it, as I recall, and Ridley kept looking, we don't have enough of this, and kept looking at this and looking at that and saying, no, that's not right. There's textures are wrong and everything like that. So we put that off and did something else. And while they reconstructed this thing in his vision, and came back to it a week later, as I recall, or a few days, several days later. It wasn't a comfortable scene to do, obviously, because you're encased in this foam or plastic thing. Then you're gooped with this liquid jello or whatever it was, you know, this goo that they put on you, you know, that drips out of the alien's mouth and all that. It was fun to watch that because Ridley would get his hands in and just cake it all over you like that. So, no, we need more, we need more. And you're just sitting there encased in this thing with this stuff being slapped on you, and you wonder, is this what I scratched and clawed my way up to the top for, you know? And, or something like that. It was a very uncomfortable scene to do, and Sigourney and I played the dynamics of that part of the film through and fully. And what was always missing for me was the fact that there was a scene that was cut out of the script that we never shot of us being lovers. It suggested we were lovers. So that was meaningful. We didn't know that was going to be cut at that time. So I think we played that look of lovers, one lover having to zap the other lover. So that was the dynamic that was working for us. We shot that part of the film prior to running out of time in its shooting schedule. Now, when you start running the end of a shooting schedule, you start looking at the script to see what scenes are expendable. It really would slow up the pace to have this goodbye scene between the two lovers, basically. It has, you know, just break up the energy of it, and it has nothing to do with the whole piece, because this other scene was cut out of the, before we didn't even bother shooting it, so, you know, they don't connect. So you don't have to resolve the love affair.
So it was in there, but at the end of the day, I think it got in the way. You didn't need it. It wasn't about that. It was that's very traditional, to have the relationship. You know, it's like a soap opera. So we discarded those elements eventually because they don't lead you anywhere, and ideally it doesn't always happen. If you have a piece of material where it's very hard to cut it down because every scene means something, then chances are you got a really good script, right? But as soon as you came to these things, they didn't really mean anything. So they were out. They were fine, but they were not, just slowed down the dynamics.
A score for motion picture is a piece of architecture like the film itself, and it should have a shape and a form. And you look to where you're going to finally, where's the high point, so that you don't top yourself in the middle of the picture so you still have somewhere to go at the very end of the picture. It was interesting on Alien. I remember when I had meetings with them in the production office, there were storyboards, but there were directions emotionally to how the levels of emotion and terror were building in the picture, which I'd never seen before or after that. But it was sort of plotted that how this was going to build in terror, which was very interesting and an interesting way of doing it. So they were very careful. I think Ridley was very careful how he structured the film from that point of view. The music I wrote for Alien was very interesting. It was avant-garde. It's the kind of film that allowed me as a composer to stretch, to try various different effects, musical ideas with an orchestra. The picture allowed me to do it. The picture was so visually striking. The set design by Giger was this sort of surrealistic sets, and it was a wonderful image, and to try and translate that emotionally into music. Then it was a strange juxtaposition of the characters, who were really sort of rough and tumble, dirty, unsophisticated people against this very sophisticated backdrop, visual. And they made a very interesting palette for me to try and write music to. The problem I had on that film was that I had one feeling, and I think the director had another feeling, and obviously the director perhaps was correct. In the first place, I thought, this is the most disgusting lot of people, this whole crew. They were totally unlikable, and I didn't care whether, the fact that they all got killed was fine by me, because they were rather disgusting people, and the only one I really started to feel sympathy for was the monster, quite frankly. And I thought, nobody's going to see this picture because nobody likes anybody. A scruffy lot, and they were, who cared? Well, I was wrong on that count. One of the problems I face today is I think that there's an overuse of music in films. And I've always been a big believer in silence in films. For instance, you take a film like Patton. The film was 3 hours long, and there was 32 minutes of music in the film. Chinatown was over 2 hours long, and there was 30 minutes of music. I use those two films as examples of brilliant filmmaking, but I think and I think the music itself was quite good for both those films, even though I wrote it, and trying to be modest. But I think that the reason that both those scores have been sort of classified as some of my best work is because of the judicious spotting of it and waiting for the right moment for the music to appear, and then allowing certain scenes to play by themselves. And in the case of like horror films or scary films or suspense films, I find nothing is more frightening than absolute silence. But it seems today that there's a tendency to not let anything be silent. And there are periods of, I've fought with, argued with directors, let the scene play, and let's wait for the appropriate moment and then bring the music out, or let's take the music out. I think that in the overall plan that silence should be part of the score. In contemporary music, silence moments of silence actually are figured in the score by the composer. The piece will play and then there's a moment of silence. It's almost part of the musical composition. There's something very terrifying about this stark stillness. And in the first Alien, there were many moments that were just subtle sound and no music whatsoever.
Jonesy. Jonesy.
I remember the scene towards the end of the picture when the monster was looking at Sigourney Weaver, and it was lustfully he was looking at her and sort of drooling. I had scored that scene twice. The first time I played it very frighteningly, and Ridley quite saying, no, he wanted something that was more sensuous. And I thought he was nuts, but then I realized what he wasn't. He was absolutely right in what he wanted, so I went that direction. And I thought, I thought the music, worked very well. And then when I saw the picture, there was no music there whatsoever. They'd left it all out. And of course, I was annoyed at first, but then I realized, in all honesty, just the slobbering of the monster, the little subtle little sounds of him looking lasciviously at Sigourney Weaver, really was frightening.
I was delighted that we got, one of the people who I'd admired all my life to do the music. And I think Ridley was certainly disappointed. He found some of it in the same way that he didn't want to make a movie in the script where I remember Dan O'Bannon's script, you open the door and the alien standing there, it twists the person's head off, puts the body, the sort of the wriggling body under his arm and scarpers off over the roof type thing. He didn't want to do a thing where you open doors and the creature says boo. He wanted to make it more subtle than that. And he found Jerry's music, I think, some of the music cues were just too kind of over the top.
There was a struggle at the ending with the last piece of music. And the last piece of music was one of those occurrences where chosen temp works better. And, it's hard. That's a hard call. Because when you're doing temp score, a lot of composers will not listen to temp score. Because if you've got a music ear at all, you're sitting there making definitive choices and decisions from some of the best pieces of music of all time and laying them onto the film. So the composer's saying, well, this is ridiculous. It's like having, 25 hits in a row. I can't, short of copying it, which I refuse to do because Jerry's a real artist, I will not do it. And but I always loved what Terry and I loved were that wonderful pause in the music before it rounds off and kind of pushes you away, pushes the boat out, and it's melancholy and beautiful and sad. Actually brings tears to your eyes at the end, and that's partly the music.
So there was tension with the music, but it worked out pretty well. I think there were some nail-biting moments because I'm not sure how whether Jerry was told the complete story or whatever. And I seem to remember when we were previewing at Fox, I think Jerry came to see the finished film, etc. And I'm not sure whether he was surprised that not all of his music was in there or not. I have a dim recollection of that.
There was a line through the movie which had more by innuendo than anything else, that there was something going on between Dallas and she. And then later, I thought was really curious, could be interesting, there's somebody going on between her and Veronica, which I thought was far more probable. I don't mean these two women, I mean 100 years from now, that's certainly not going to be remarkable in space. And where I think you're going to, in fact, in space, relationships are probably going to be discouraged. And if you have the need for sex, it can be with either gender. It really doesn't matter, right? And I think a psychologist would encourage that. Think about it, because if you're on board with a small unit crew and there's a relationship with a couple, that fences them out. And I think that's going to create problems inside, right? or if that relationship goes wrong, and then you have jealousy. Geez, you've got little, you've got minor warfare going on inside this steel box many miles from Earth. The nodding bird was going to be the last moment before the ship goes off. And I wanted it was like a countdown when she was programming the ship to go up. And then she blew away from the ship. She took off away from the ship. I was going to cut back into the total silence of the ship and just see the bird go, 4, 3, 2, 1. That was it. But we didn't do that. We didn't want to use that at that point. I shot it, but you didn't need it,
I was convinced that 1941 was going to win. And then when they said, and the winners are Carlo Rambaldi, I think was the first name that came up. And I realised we'd won. Well, you could have knocked me down with a sixpence. I sort of dashed out and I thought, my God, I'm going to have to say something. What on earth am I going to say? And then I got up on the stage along with the others, and it was Farrah Fawcett Majors was the presenter. So I got a kiss from her, and then we stood there looking at 3,500 Academy people, and you think, oh my God, what am I going to say? And I thank my children and my wife, then wife, and and the crew, and Ridley and everything, and that was it. And then we were off. And then you go down these corridors, and you follow these yellow lines or blue lines, whichever one they want you to follow. And you wind up doing a radio interview or a TV interview or whatever else it is. And then you sort of bump into Nastasia Kinski, or you bump into Warren Beatty or something, and they're all standing around, and you think, hell, this is amazing. And you don't come down, you've got this golden thing in your hand, which weighs a ton, with no names or anything on it, because it's not predetermined. And then off you go, and eventually you wind up having dinner, and you stick your Academy Award on the table, and everybody comes up and slaps you on the back, and you're a 5-minute wonder, and then you get back to reality again.
It sandbagged every subsequent effort to make a scary monster movie is what it did. When I write a script, I always try to exhaust the themes. I mean, if I'm going to write about something, I don't want to leave something important unsaid about that theme. So I try always to see to the bottom of any piece of material. And I certainly try to do that on Alien. And although I didn't realize it at the time, the result of that has been that Alien, this was not my intent. I'm not this mean, but the result has been that Alien fulfilled a genre, and thereby put a cap on it. Nothing left to do in that genre. How do you make a detective movie after Chinatown? I didn't set out to do that, but I did it. But you know, really, that was the only thing left to do in the genre of the science fiction monster movie. I was not early in the game, I was late. You know, the heyday of that type of movie was played out in the early 50s, and its prime was played out in the mid-50s. And then there was a long period of crappy imitations. By the time I came along, the only thing I left to do was either junk or finish it off. I didn't mean to finish it off, but by bringing everything in that genre to its ultimate, we certainly ended up doing that. I mean, my advice to filmmakers in that genre is, you know, don't waste your creative blood. Move on. The next time that it will be possible to do something in that genre and have it be punchy and original is when they move beyond movies altogether and make feelies or something. It is possible to revitalize an idea when a new medium emerges.
I remember seeing Alien, waiting in line for the very first 8 o'clock screening in Westwood. I was terrified before I even got into the theater. I was so anxious to see it. I'm a huge fan of science fiction. I very much wanted to be making films like that, and when I saw it, I thought it was one of the best movies I had ever seen, and it absolutely lived up to and exceeded my expectations.
No, I recall seeing the original Alien and being very, very scared and frightened, and you know, taken in by just the sort of the darkness of it.
I could actually smell it. The movie was so visceral, you know, and so unusual. It was reality, and I think the acting was so almost improvised and street. You know, it had a reality quality.
The performances just seemed so real, you know. The whole look of the spaceship and that whole environment was just so dirty and so used. It really felt like a real life working kind of world. And I just totally bought into it. And I just remember that whole movie just had such an element of reality to me that it just was very effective. It was probably one of the most effective movies I'd ever seen at that time in terms of not manipulating you as an audience member, but definitely engulfing you in the world that it was trying to create.
It was so moody and rich and such a unique world that was created, you know, through Geiger, through Ridley Scott. And then the whole chestburster thing was truly, well, it was gut-wrenching. It was shocking and visceral and disturbing and surprising.
I mean, that was such a horrific shot. And I mean, it just cut everybody down to the quick. It was so chilling and so successful an effect that it kind of set us up for sequels to come.
It was just a very creepy movie. Even when the monster wasn't in it, it was almost an element of what was being told to you as the audience internally, as opposed to what you were seeing on screen.
I think I watched most of Alien like this. So I don't know if it's what I saw or what I didn't see that scared me more.
I'm not scared by a lot of films. When I was at the Egyptian, I found myself sort of sliding below the seat in front of me.
I saw American technicians crawling up the aisle virtually in terror, actually crawling up on the carpeted floor up the steps to get out. I mean, there were lots of people really freaked out.
I think that we were all at least 4 feet out of our chairs. And I also remember that everyone went back in their seats as if they were trying to get as far away from the screen as possible.
I was only, I think, like 3 when it first came out. And part of the thing was James Cameron said I had to watch Alien before we did anything to do with aliens as far as filming. And so I watched it, but I think I was 8 at the time, I didn't think it was scary. I thought it was funny. I was laughing at it the whole time. So it was, now watching it, it's kind of scary.
I think Alien, when it came out, it set a whole new level in terms of artistry, of illusion, for science fiction.
I think a lot of people forget that Ridley Scott set a lot of visual standards that are ubiquitous in science fiction films. Things like smoking up the sets and the strobe light thing at the very end when Ripley sees the alien for the first time as the ship's going. All these visual sort of design things came from, I guess, probably out of his commercial. He's a commercial director.
I was stunned. I mean, I left that theater again stunned. I get stunned easy, but I mean by quality. You know, and it was really quality.
Here was one of the most intelligent monsters that Hollywood had ever seen. And the design, the Geiger design, was so like nothing anyone had, so ingenious, like nothing anyone had ever seen. And the whole idea of its evolution, the way it would gestate inside a human host and all of this stuff, and then it would grow, and it had acid for blood. I mean, it was really quite thought out. And Ridley Scott's realization of that script in terms, again, of the art direction and the scale. Here was the scale was awesome. I remember when they go into the derelict ship, and when they finally go up and you see the pilot of that ship, and you see them, the scale was fabulous.
This film left a huge impression on me, and it was just this sort of landmark, another Ridley Scott landmark film in science fiction.
So I was blown away by the first one, and I mean, if I would have walked out there and somebody would come up and said, "Hey, you're going to be in the sequel to this movie in about 6 years' time," I'd go, "Yeah, get out, yeah, right."
When the picture was finally finished and over in the can, and I thought all the battling was over, I get this thing in the mail, this notice of intended writing credit from 20th Century Fox saying that Alien, the screenplay credit for Alien is going to be to Walter Hill and David Giler. And I fell flat on my back. And I picked up the phone and I called Walter Hill at his home. I actually had his home number in those days. I said, "Walter," I said, "I'm begging you, please let me share credit with you." And Walter said, and I'll never forget the words, he said, "Dan, I've been through these arbitrations before, and you win some, you lose some." End of conversation. I said, "Okay, arbitration, win some, lose some, then I must try to win this one." I contacted the Writers Guild. I was new to this stuff. I found out how they did it. I requested an arbitration. It was granted. They said, "You sit down and you write this thing, and you do this, and you do that, and you submitted it." And I worked harder on that credit arbitration statement than I've ever worked on any script or movie in my life. Handed it in. The decision came down because, you see, in fact, Hill and Giler had sufficiently bruised that script that at that point I was willing to share credit with them. I was willing to have, let's say, a screenplay by Dan O'Bannon and Walter Hill or some such thing, just so that I wouldn't have to take the blame for some of the sillier and more inadequate aspects of that script. Because I had an original script that was like clockwork for all of the elements of a thriller. I mean, that thing gleamed. That was up there with, Agatha Christie or anybody. Because I understood the elements of a thriller. And after they got done through, bang, bang, crash, 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 it was like, well, I guess I'll go down in the cellar after the cat so the monster can jump on me. It was down at that level. And I wanted their names on that just so I could say, well, some of this is mine, some of it's theirs. But when they came after me with their maw dripping for the whole credit, I realized this is war. This is no holds barred. This is no prisoners. I've got to demand all of the credit myself, if I even expect to share it. Well, Writers Guild came back, gave me all the credit and them none, which was more than I'd expected. And I wasn't sure how I felt about that altogether, but I knew I had won. But Hill's basic public position was he had written this script and I had screwed him out of the credit. I guess using my position of power, right, over him. And he kept saying this for years. As far as I could tell, everybody believed him, too. And I said, I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to get involved in a public war of words. I said, because that looks terrible. Nobody knows who to believe anyway, and you just end up both looking bad. And after about 5 years, I changed my mind. I decided, no. I said, that's true that you all come out looking bad. On the other hand, the person that shouts loudest is the one who gets, who writes the history. So Walter Hill, by the way, in complete violation of Writers Guild rules, because when you lose an arbitration, you're never supposed to come out and contest that publicly. One too many times, Walter came out and said that he wrote it all, and I screwed him for credit. And I turned into some old Donald Duck cartoon, whack, 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 whack. And I picked up the phone and I called my attorney, because I had one by then. And I said, you tell Walter Hill that if he opens his mouth one more time in public, I'm going to do something really awful. And he did so, and Walter shut up. And I noticed that opinion started to slightly turn in my direction. I mean, it's late in the game now, years after the picture was open, but gradually people started coming to me as the writer of Alien and giving Walter less attention. And I thought, lesson to be learned. And so since then, I have not hesitated to tell the story in its fullness, because shutting my mouth got me nothing except run over with a big steamroller.